Remember being a little child, sitting on the kneeler below the pew while my grandmother and mother were in church. I remember learning how to make the sign of the cross. Later, I can remember wanting to go to church, but for various reasons, we didn't always go to church on Sundays or during the week. And I remember walking into our living room where we had, do you remember the big Bibles that were like ivory colored with a picture of Jesus on the front? And I remember kissing it. When I reflected on that, I think in my teens, because I hadn't been practicing in the Byzantine church, I didn't connect the walking in and kissing of Jesus on the Bible with what we do every time we enter the church and we reverence the icon and make the sign of the cross. So these little things that kind of develop out of habit and again, out of almost like just nature, are an important part of my understanding and my realization of Jesus. I also remember I had received a children's Bible with a beautiful bookmark. Beauty is really important, isn't it? With a beautiful bookmark. It was like a stamped brass bookmark. And reading the Bible, and I thought, I'm going to read the whole Bible. And even if we don't go to church, I'm going to be reading the Bible and learning about, who God is. And I remember that being a goal for me, even when I was very young. So probably it must have been after, maybe after First Communion, because I think it was probably a gift for First Communion. I teach adolescence, and I remember clearly the difficulties of sophomore year. I think adolescence continues to be a challenge for us as we really are growing in so many fast ways, changing so rapidly. There's a loss of control over all the myriad things that go along with our bodies. And we watch the news. We have so little control over the news and over even, just what's happening in our day-to-day life, especially when you're a teenager, you're going to high school. So I found life particularly challenging. Then I was quite depressed. I would often go and I would just turn off the lights and turn the music on loud. I would listen to flute music, Paul Horn's music in the pyramids, beautiful, haunting, improvisational music. I would listen to popular music. I would listen to the band U2. Their song "Bad" is an excellent song to listen to when I was, and anytime I'm feeling down or depressed. And I also had been going through karate, and so some of the lessons of relaxation, of calming oneself down, of breathing, I would combine with lyrics that appealed to me or really hit me where I was feeling particularly emotional. And I would combine that with prayer. So I would really call out to God and allow that music to kind of bring me through a quiet beginning and a crescendo and a finale in prayer. And I remember that I didn't like God. I was very, very upset with just life. I mean, this is the 80s, right? I mean, we're talking about, nuclear war is always around the corner, and the Cold War is quite evident, and conditions in Latin America with the disappeared and all these things. So I remember listening in particular to a song, Depeche Mode, can't remember the lyrics right now. Oh, blasphemous rumors. It made me very sad. In fact, I don't like to listen to the song at all, even today. And I even hesitate to say the lyrics. But it was, I don't want to start any blasphemous rumors, but I think that God has a sick sense of humor. And that fueled that depression. Talk about hope. Well, that drained hope right out of me. And someone had given voice to that. And it wasn't until I realized, and again, this was in prayer, that I had to come to the Lord realizing that I wasn't perfect, that as a human being, that I not only wasn't perfect, but I needed help, that I called out to the Lord in prayer and asked him to please heal me, and I apologized for my sinful, blasphemous prayers to the Lord, and really just asked him to please to heal me. And I'm sorry, Lord. I'm so sorry for how I have been reacting. And I had a vision of it was a blue light that and in the faintest outline of a dove, and I felt the greatest amount of peace and love I have ever felt in my life. And I remember experiencing it and then recognizing it and realizing that in recognizing it, I was going to lose it, because that it would end, that this moment would not extend through eternity, that it was just a glimpse. And I used that moment my whole life to continue to really, I return to it, that theophany, as we would call it, to remember that no matter what life looks like, no matter what we or I encounter, or what I am faced with, the challenges, the obstacles, I am loved and I am known. And it is in so much more of a way than just my address and my name, that I am loved by the Creator of all. And he wants to know me. I think that despair certainly exists. There are certainly moments of desperation, but it exists alongside that knowledge that I have really been graced with, that the Lord is present in our lives, in my life, that the Lord exists. So at times when I just feel like the tank is empty, just the opportunity to stop and to reorient myself, to come to the Lord's feet, to place myself at his will is really important. It's very easy to get off track, and as if you've ever tried to drive with Waze or Google Maps, to get recentering, redirecting, but just to stop and to close my eyes, take a deep breath, and remember who's on the throne is an important element, I think, of daily living. Does that mean that I'm not anxious or that I don't worry? Oh, I wish. I wish it meant that. But I have to really kind of sometimes even drag myself just to sit and in quiet. I most appreciate to be able to pray at adoration, not necessarily exposition, but to find in the chapel or here in the church, to just find the opportunity to be still, to be with God, that can really help to refuel me, to recharge me. And again, making time in the day is the challenge for that, right? Because honestly, to sit at home and pray and be still is good. And I have had great moments of grace. But to take myself out of that, my daily life, and set it aside and come to the Lord's house has always been a really important part of my faith. I think the virtue of humility has played an important role in my development. And I think my understanding of humility is something that has evolved. When I was in high school, even when I was younger, the idea of what it meant to be humble meant, oh, no, it's not about me. It's all about God. And almost like a putting down of oneself. I don't think that's what God means when he calls us to the virtue of humility. It's really understanding our place, right? And speaking of anxiety, just talking about humility, I recognize that it's very simple for someone on the outside to say, she doesn't look very humble to me, I mean, so this virtue of humility, it has to be something that I'm practicing regularly. And because I'm not perfect, I'm going to fail at it sometimes. And I have to know my place in relationship to God and to my brothers and sisters. And so in understanding who God is, I have to understand who I am, right? I am his creature. I am someone that he has a being he's created for a specific purpose. And it's only given to me. So that's really an amazing concept. And it's something that I feel like I'm growing into. What has God called me to do? And why am I here? What is that ultimate goal? And as I'm aging, the question of, will I fulfill my purpose? And what's my purpose? And if I finish and I fulfill my purpose, does that mean that I'm done? And am I okay with that? Like, I don't know. I really don't know. So that's where not knowing everything is a good thing. Because I sometimes think, if I knew what my final end would be, how would I live the rest of my life? I mean, there's a certain grace in the mystery of our lives that God has in place for us. But I think to stick with that idea that the glory of God is a man fully alive and, living out that purpose, really living my talents and my gifts to the fullest at the feet of the Lord and his mission to bring his message to the world. I tell a story that there was an individual that I had a conflict with. And I would see them at church as well. So it wasn't in church that we had a conflict, but it was outside of church. And the Lord put me near that person week after week. I would move seats. I would change where I was sitting. And never failed, that person was either standing in front of me or behind me or to the side. And in the Latin Rite, we physically offer the sign of Christ's peace. And so I would continually have to, Christ's peace be with you. Every fiber of my being was not interested in that person having peace because I was so upset about my own stuff. It probably had nothing to do with that person, but I was so upset. And so I would do two things. First is when I would pray the Our Father, I would really put an emphasis and really a lot of thought into forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. That line, really put into stark detail. If I want the Lord to forgive me, I need to turn to my neighbor and do the same. And the other was really a visualization prayer. And so I just took that person and I placed them before the Lord, and I handed God the keys, and I said, I'm giving this over to you. And eventually that forgiveness did come. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. So we don't have to keep putting ourselves into positions. Again, this is kind of a naive understanding of forgiveness, where you think, oh, I forgave that person, so I have to return to relationship with them in the same way that it's always been. Forgiveness, again, does not mean forgetting. It does not mean that you continually place yourself in harm's way or in abusive situations. It just means that you let go of it. So again, there can often be that misunderstanding of what forgiveness is in our life that is not the same. Again, we give it to God. Salvation for myself, my family, and friends. That's the selfish response to your question of what do I want from the Lord. Peace, but the peace that surpasses all understanding. We have such tenuous peace throughout the world, and an open war in so many areas. If you ask, is there a devil? I see him clearly shown in war and in devastation that we see across the globe. But so, of course, I would ask for peace, but I think also that I may be his witness in a way that brings others to the Lord, brings them closer to him, that I might be a beacon rather than a banishment to people and their salvation. I mean, it's always a challenge sitting here, being video recorded by you asking really important questions about faith and life and the mystery of God. That scares me to death because the best response sometimes I feel like is silence. And yet we are called, in the Great Commission, we're called to go out and share the good news, teaching all of what the Lord has shared with us, and to baptize in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And it sounds so simple, and it can be so scary.